Yes, so International School of Brunei was an outstanding success for all our children. Roger did a 6 month foundation course, and Sergio and Julie were both held back a year because of the difference in the academic calendar between Australia and Brunei. Now, later on, as it transpired, this turned out to be a mistake, I think, because they would have been easily able to quote with a year ahead. And it meant that they were older than other students. And I think this led to them being less satisfied with the school and with Brunei in their later years as they outgrew both mentally. But of course, it's a private school. They want you to hold you back because they get an extra year's fees. It's money as usual. Anyway, Roger did very well in his international baccalaureate. In fact, his performance was outstanding. And yeah, then due to the kindness of our friends in Thailand, he went to Thailand and spent 6 months there working for a teacher recruitment company. And yeah, so it was good. Then he went to Melbourne University, and yeah, that's where he started off with. And when he was in Brunei, Roger had a charming girlfriend. So I think he enjoyed his 2 years there. Although I've no doubt that he missed his friends, his peers from Bristol. Oh, sorry, from Brisbane. Um, Now, Sergio and Julie got a lot out of the ISB school, not just academically, they also did very well, but their extracurricular activities were outstanding as well. They enjoyed everything. Julie was the lead in a musical, and Serge had a major part. They were both general secretaries in the Borneo Global Issues Conference, which was part of the mini United Nations setup. An amazing thing, really very, very good. And yeah, the academic side of things was very satisfactory too for them. However, as the years progressed and they grew up, they became, yes, less satisfied with Brunei. There's no doubt about it. They wanted to go and see the world, of course, as all young people do. And Marie and I became less satisfied too, and not so much with the school, but with Brunei itself. So, but life was really easy, and I think perhaps we had all become a little spoiled. We had easy travel by car everywhere. We didn't have to walk anywhere. We had an ama to help us wash the dishes and the clothes and help us cook. There was cheap food available everywhere. There were DVDs. They were the latest new things for entertainment. It was an easy existence. And we had holidays, parts of Malaysia and Eastern Asia available for holidays. It was an easy existence, and I would say this in retrospect because we didn't realize it at the time, but it was probably not the best preparation for life in the real world for the children because Brunei was not the real world. Um, Actually, my children's social life, yeah, was very good as well. They had all these good friends, but as they grew up, they had older friends and they even had friends in the royal family. And that was fine. I mean, they were nice people, but at the same time, it was a bit unrealistic in terms of preparation for the real world to have contact with the royal family and to go there for sleepovers and things, and for the royal car to arrive at the house and to pick you up and take you there. So I'm not sure how realistic that preparation was for the real world. Then when Roger, he went to Cornell after Melbourne, and it really, he got the offer to Cornell, actually from Cornell, when he was in Melbourne. And he wasn't sure what to do, there's no doubt about it, and neither was I, to be honest. Of course, I was keen. For him, I thought it was a wonderful thing to be invited to go to an Ivy League university and on a high scholarship. But yes, of course, in retrospect, um, the the preparation in Brunei for going to a high-powered environment like Cornell was not really very good. But that was in retrospect. Anyway, as time went on then at the school, Serge and Julie kind of outgrew the school a little bit, and they became less happy. I wouldn't say unhappy, but less happy with it. And then we had to start to think about what to do next with them, because if you have unhappy children, then of course the parents also become unsettled as well. Anyway, just leaving ISB for a moment, let's go now to Maktab Sains, because about halfway through the 9 years, I changed my school. So by about 2005, I'd had enough of Mengelite. Although it was much better school than the Water Village, there was a sameness about it that was ultimately soul-destroying, really. For all the charm of the students, there were some things about the school that were really negative by any standard. For one thing, the classrooms were uninhabitable, and for both students and teachers. Neither man nor beast could function in them. They were filthy, they were hot, they were airless, there was a noise constantly of fans and traffic, and all this made it necessary for the teacher often to have to shout in the classroom in order to be heard. And of course, many teachers just couldn't be bothered to shout and simply wrote their instructions on the board for the tasks to be carried out. So all this made for a quite dismal environment for students and teachers. And this in a country with vast resources of oil and money. No excuse for it at all. More importantly, just as important anyway, was that the English curriculum was beyond the vast majority of students. It was the same curriculum I had studied in the UK as a native speaker, as a boy. So as a result, only about 1% of the students could even get a credit. That's grades C, B, or A. Only 1% of the final cohort. And the credit was the minimum standard required to enter the university. So you can see the rest of the students were basically destined to become petrol pump attendants and car park kiosk staff and very low-grade office workers. So, after a while, this just palled on me, really. The local staff, of course, were quite friendly, and the CFBT staff could be as well, but they were a bit variable. Certainly my debating colleague was an Australian, and he was a soulmate of mine. We got on very well. Sparks sometimes flew between us, but the chemistry was generally very good, and we had a great laugh most of the time. But it wasn't enough. So in desperation, I applied for a transfer. And to my complete surprise, I was given one almost immediately to Maktab Sains. Now, this was a great stroke of fortune and definitely saved us, I think. It was a game changer for me. I knew the teaching would be good, and this turned out to be the case. And the staff also turned out to be friendly and more open. Now, this was largely due to the principal, who although fairly conservative by Western standards, was approachable and a kind-hearted person. So after a few months and having mastered the new teaching environment, I quickly decided that I needed another project to do to develop myself professionally and to help me get another job after Brunei. So I started thinking about doing an action research project and submitting it for a doctoral dissertation. I looked online for universities and I came up with a variety of cheap ones who turned out to be what are called diploma mills, not really genuine doctoral programs. I finally came across what I thought was a more reputable one and yet seemed affordable. I enrolled in 2005 to do an action research study. Now, although in the end it was technically called an educational doctorate, it was, in my opinion, only the equivalent of another master's degree. So this would be my fourth master's degree, although it was called an EDD. The beauty of this was, of doing it online, was that I could do it without seeking permission from the school and the Ministry of Education. I'm sure both of them would have said no if I'd submitted a doctoral proposal that was not online, because that was their immediate response to everything was no. And I wanted to control my own action research. So in the end, I was able to enlist the passive support of the principal, really. And that was all I wanted. I did not want her active support because active support could very easily turn into interference and control by her. I didn't want that. One of the highlights at MS was the debating. This time I was on my own without my colleagues, but the students were outstanding, the best in the country. I had a great time coaching them, and we won the senior competition one year. It was so easy to coach these students. They did all the work. But when the principal met me afterwards, she referred to me as the emperor. Apparently, debating had a very high status in the school culture. I didn't complain. The academic teaching was also great at Maktab Sains. The students were an absolute delight. I was able to try lots of ideas with them. One of the noteworthy things about the Malay culture is the love of music. So I decided to try working with the Phantom of the Opera in my sixth form class. It was a huge success and the students loved it. I would do vocabulary work with it. In fact, it was such a success that the students decided to include a sketch from the Phantom of the Opera in their end of year review in front of the whole school. It was also a great success and was greeted with rapturous applause by the whole school, except for one person. Unfortunately for me, the new principal, who was very conservative, did not like it. I was told later by local colleagues and members of staff. I think this might have been one of the main reasons why, at the end of the year, this principal put me on the shit list. One of the most annoying things about teaching in Brunei was how teachers were expected to provide their own equipment and teaching aids. Oh, by the way, the shit list is the veto list. In other words, your contract is not renewed. Yeah, we were expected to provide our own equipment and teaching aids. I'm not sure if this is just part of the culture or whether it's simply a consequence of incompetence. But at MS, I bought my own marker pens for the whiteboard, my own writing pens and pencils, paid for my own photocopies, my own television, video cassette player, DVD player, electrical extensions and adapters, audio cassette players, laptop computers, and paper and fans. I even paid $150 to have the air conditioner fixed in my classroom, as the school simply would not pay to have it fixed. It was the best $150 I invested in that whole year. In a school with dozens of computers, the internet was not available for staff use, so there were still a lot of frustrations. Many of the classrooms had plugs and sockets and fans which did not work. Many of the air conditioners had broken down, and no attempt was ever made to repair them in the classrooms. There seemed to be a belief that a hot, sweaty, stinking classroom was good for a student's character. There was also a chronic teacher shortage. The English department at Maktab Sains, the premier college in the nation, was always 2 and sometimes 3 staff down. This was tolerable, I guess, in the first 2 years when the principal was an approachable person and expectations of our workload were quite reasonable. We agreed to cover as much as we could when we were able to. The students at Maktab Sains were able to be left unsupervised anyway. But with the arrival of another principal, it became a problem as she insisted on every class being covered. And then she brought us back in the afternoons in order to do this. But I believe that the real reason there was a teacher shortage in Brunei was because the ministry didn't care. In fact, I was convinced it was not just negligence or incompetence on the part of the ministry. It was even more than this. It was a deliberate policy to actually increase teacher loads covertly. You simply understaff the departments. Lack of communication was the hallmark of all administrations, I think, in most Bruneian schools. And the second principal at Maktab Sains was an absolute shocker in this respect. And what a shame it was that she arrived at this flagship school. She arrived in the first week of February and was obliged, against her own instincts, by public demand, to have a short 10-minute meeting of staff to explain how she was going to take the school to, quote, a higher level. That was the only staff meeting we had all year. Not that I liked staff meetings, but it was just typical of her that she believes they were not necessary, and to communicate formally with her staff in this way. Everything was done by a written memo and directive. She did not speak, even informally, to most staff, only to her gang of attack dogs who carried out her dirty work for her, enforcing her many new measures designed to change the school from being a flagship school of innovation into something resembling a nunnery. She did not speak to the students either. The only communication was to have formal assemblies at which she talked invariably about graffiti in the toilets, a thing which had been unknown at Maktab Sains before her arrival. She treated the school like it was a piece of her own property, and the people in it like kindergarten children. In fact, she invited the director of prisons to address our scholarship students before they went to the UK. What an inspiration for those young people. More on that later.